I had a friend come to me and he had sad little particle board shelves for his gun safe, and he asked if I could do some of my woodworking magic, and well, there was only one solution when he handed me the shelves, and that was to replace them with real hardwood. He wasn't particular about the type of wood that he used, so I decided to use maple. So one small problem though is that the price of lumber is at a premium. I only picked up two 10-foot pieces for the job, so I'm gonna try to make them work. I milled down and glued the pieces up so I could get started the next morning. I usually try to build a little extra material into the budget, but since prices were so high, I wanted to challenge myself. These are really simple shelves, but once I laid it all out, I found that I was actually about a foot short on the material. Luckily, I'm a bit of a wood hoarder, so I found a couple of scrap pieces in my wood pile. I started mapping out where the pieces were gonna go for the shelves and get them all laid out. There were a couple of dark streaks in the maple that I wanted to avoid, so I picked a section for the lower shelf that will have the rifle cutouts on it and used it for that. The existing particle board shelves have felt on the top, and the rifle notches are also lined with felt. I have to remove the felt so I can later use the pattern bit and make an exact replica. I'll end up tracing the old shelf out and using that as a template for the new shelf. I put this little montage break in here to give you a moment to click like. If you click like, that helps YouTube to identify that this is a good video and more people will see it, and I appreciate that. Once I had the pieces cut down to manageable sizes, I sanded them down and removed the glue. I used a drum sander for this, but you could also use a hand plane or hand sander as well if you wanted to make it longer of a process. This is extra material that I had on hand. I use this for my charcuterie boards because of the beautiful grain, but this should make for a nice center upright for the cabinet. I'm gonna take these two boards and get them cleaned up on each side so I can glue them together. I start by sending them through the planer so I can see how the grain will match up, and once they're cleaned up, then I lay them side by side. And to match them together, you can use some double-sided sticky tape or blue painter's tape with CA glue to attach them. And there are a few ways that you can get a clean edge to both sides at the same time. You can run a track saw down both pieces and you should get pretty close. Since I only have a small benchtop joiner, I'm gonna try this technique so I can try to avoid using the joiner. Okay, I didn't love how the seam looked on these, so I'm gonna attach a long level to use as a straight edge and run it along the table saw fence. I apply some sticky tape to one side, and as you can see, there's a lot of gap, which is why using a long level helps to make for a straighter edge along the fence. The seam with this method looked much better, so these are ready to get glued up. While the glue on the upright panel is drying, I'm mapping out the areas on the bottom of the shelf. With complex cutouts like this, it's good to put a little X so you can know which areas you're removing. I'm using a jigsaw to remove the area for the rifle cutouts. It's important that you stay on the outside of the line, because if the blade flexes inward toward the finished piece, you'll end up removing more material than you want, and you'll have to make a lot of corrections. I'm using a pattern bit here to get a perfect match to the original, and I do have a CNC, and so you may be asking yourself why I didn't use the CNC. Well, two reasons. The first answer is it's a really simple project, and I wanted to show a few of my techniques that I use. And number two, because I love pattern bits. When I was done with the pattern bit, I went over to the spindle sander and cleaned up the edges, and I wanted to use the CNC at some point in this project. You could do this with using a dado stack or something like that, or just a router, but I'm using a couple different bits. I'll leave a description below. If you're glad that I used the CNC, leave a comment below, and I'll incorporate more of the CNC stuff in future videos. I already sanded the pieces down and water popped them to raise the grain. You didn't need to see that. We'll just skip right past that. And once the grain was raised, I finished sand with 220 and 320 grit. This Renner Wood Coating is fantastic for projects like this. You can brush this on, or you can use a sprayer. If you do use a sprayer, you'll want to dilute it with 10% water. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it with the material that I had on hand, and I almost risked having to run to the lumberyard again, which is an hour away. I'm really glad it all worked out. The moment of truth is making sure that it all fits in place and the client's happy. He is a friend, so I'm sure he'd tell me if he wasn't. If you want to know more about the finishing technique I used in this piece, check out the next video and hit subscribe so I know that this video was valuable.